So here I am in a physical therapy office. I have all this awesome equipment at my disposal, but I'm going to show you guys how to do a lower body routine without using anything. So once you've gotten nice and warmed up, you did a little bit of cardio just to get your heart rate up, get your muscles warmed up. This is a good thing to jump right into.
So I typically don't recommend static stretching before you're about to do a workout or before any type of athletic activity. I usually like to stick with dynamic type of drills and exercises, but I have really tight quads from being on my feet at work all day. So this stretch is a good stretch. You just kind of get in a seated position and you feel a good stretch in your quads and in your patellar tendon. And it just feels really good. You can hold it for as long as you want. Just breathe in and breathe out, very light and very relaxed. So this next stretch is a really good hip opener that I like to do before squatting. And basically what you want to do is get down in a squat position and find something to hold on to. And tuck your elbows inside of your knees and push out, getting a good stretch in your adductors. I also feel a stretch in my glutes and in my hamstrings, as well as my ankles and in my Achilles tendon. And sometimes I'll like to shift side to side to hit my peroneals in different angles of my ankle. And one of the best things that you can do with this stretch is you can hold it as long as you want and you can rock side to side.
Sometimes I can even stretch out my lower back or upper back by reaching a little bit higher and letting my body just kind of roll back. If I'm down in this position and I want to get that stretch in my lower back, I just reach kind of right about shoulder height and let myself roll back. And I even like to tuck my chin too, just a little bit.
By tucking my chin, I also feel a slight stretch in my traps, my upper traps, and my rhomboids. So give this stretch a try if you've got a really tight upper back.
So if your lower, middle, or upper back are tight, or your quads are tight, I recommend doing those static stretches first, and then you can move on to some more dynamic exercises, which is what I'm about to show you right here.
So this first exercise is a nice dynamic exercise. It's called hip swing, very popular exercise that you might have seen people do. And what it does is it loosens up your hip capsule and your hip joint, and it also fires your hip flexors and your quads, and you'll get a good stretch in your hamstrings too. And to also target the hip abductors and adductors, you can do it out to the side as well. You want to be very fluid with this movement. It's not supposed to be like a intense exercise. It's mostly supposed to be for fluidity, just to get warmed up. Next thing I like to do are these hip capsule openers. Just a couple of those on each side, just to work a different plane and a different movement. And then I like to move on to these kneaded chest pulls. Very good stretch for your high hamstring, your glute tie-in, and also very good for just an overall posterior chain stretch. Here you can see a side angle. I'm just pulling my knees up maybe a little bit past 90 degrees and trying to pull them as high as I can until I get a good stretch. After that, I move on to something that's called hip cradle. Very good because you can work the hip flexion and external rotation functions of the hip. Just a couple of these on each side. You don't need to overdo it, and you don't need to go crazy with it either. Then I move on to butt kicks. Very good dynamic way to warm up the quads. Get a stretch in the quads while also firing the hamstrings, and just get a nice cardiovascular warm up in your routine. And lastly, I perform these high marches to get my hip flexors firing. Most people don't realize that the hip flexors are a strong muscle, and they often forget that it's responsible for a lot of force production. So give this exercise routine a try if you're short on time and don't have the equipment.